Welcome to Professor Sky's Spam channel, where I talk about anything that is not new movies. And I will explain and remove the bow tie very soon. I'm going to be doing a review of the movie Vengeance, and I'm going to do it in sort of 3 layers of spoiler, getting increasingly more spoilery. So the first, no spoiler layer is this. Go see the movie. Like, if you know absolutely nothing about this movie, literally nothing, go see this movie if you trust my taste in music and movies and art and all that stuff, okay? Just stop my video, find a showing. It doesn't have to be like the greatest theater, okay? Like, you don't have to see it in the best possible setting, but go support this movie and go see it. So that's my first layer. The second layer is a little more developed. So you probably know what I knew going in, which is very little. So, like, literally yesterday morning, my wife said, let's do something fun. Let's go see a movie. And she looked up all the movies that were playing, and she said, what about Vengeance? I had literally never heard of it before, but she said it was by BJ Novak. So I'm just in. I'm just in. I really like BJ Novak's work on The Office. And the reason behind the bow tie here is I got this at a clothing store in Central Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts called Keezer's, where my friend used to work. And I once made a post about this on Facebook, or replied to a post. And BJ Novak commented on that, because, he's a Harvard guy and he went there as well. So, that was like my closest brush to fame, and I still will trot out that story every once in a while to remind my kids of how cool their dad is. So, so I have kind of like a pre-existing affection for BJ Novak. But then, that's all I knew. I knew that he directed a movie. I didn't know he was in it, and I didn't know that he wrote it. I didn't understand that until I went in. And let's just take one more second, before I go even further, to continue to appreciate what is happening right now. Because it's very easy to look at the state of cinema and cry, and just say, oh my God, Disney owns everything. They're slow-footing the entire release schedule of all movies. All cineplexes are gone. No movies for adults are being made. All movies are just intellectual property. There's no such thing as novelty. We now have, in back-to-back weeks, 2 great young-ish comedians, Jordan Peele and BJ Novak, making works of individual auteurish vision, which are both funny, engaging, tell us about humanity, and tell us about America. So let's just appreciate that for a little bit. But of course, the big difference is Jordan Peele is entirely behind the camera, and here we have BJ Novak in front of it. So you saw my thumbnail. I'm going to call it something like, is BJ Novak the Woody Allen we deserve? And I'm certain that I'm not the only person to make this comparison, okay? I haven't read any criticisms. I haven't watched any reviews. I don't know. Maybe this is what everyone's saying. But I will tell you, I'm probably the only person who's going to compare him to Lizzo, the pop star. Let me explain. So when I reviewed Lizzo's album on my other channel last week, I tried to explain, like what is it that makes her so special? And what makes her so important? And the thing is, she filled in a cultural hole, or actually multiple cultural holes that existed. So there were previous female artists who fulfilled a role in our pop culture landscape. And they abdicated. They left their role, either through scandal or death or choice. Like Missy Elliott, Lauryn Hill, and Amy Winehouse. So when I'm talking about BJ Novak being a better Woody Allen or a new Woody Allen, it's partly in reaction to the fact that there's a Woody Allen hole in our culture. And I know, he keeps releasing movies. But I know something else. I'm not going to watch them. I can't do that. I don't support abusers, and I'm really not into biological determinism, So I can't watch his movies. And again, I don't think this is a condemnation of people who can. I can watch Roman Polanski movies, even though what he did is objectively worse, but I think it's just a question of comedy, right? I mean, I can't laugh at somebody, I can't empathize with somebody when I think that they lack really, really crucial empathy. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you, I have, 15 DVDs of Woody Allen movies. I just can't put them in. So we have a hole in our culture, in our society, but who's going to fill it? I mean, okay, he's not a good guy, but dear Lord, What did he do? I mean, how could you possibly write and direct and star with your own personality be so forward? How could anyone do what he did? Well, it turns out, sorry, that's the sound of my dog. He's going to be crawling around in the back. It turns out you can do it the way B.J. Novak did it. And I would actually argue that the experience of watching Vengeance is more agreeable than watching even a top-level 70s era Woody Allen movie. Although I actually prefer 80s Woody Allen, but I don't know. That's just me. So what is this comparison based on? It is not based on the sort of superficial concept that they're both Jewish comedians who sometimes touch on a sort of fish out of water being in a non-Jewish society with, like, okay, so the movie takes place in Texas and there's like a couple jokes to that effect, but, it's not like they don't know what a schmear is, right? Like there's none of that, right? That aspect of it, I would say, is the most minor, the most superficial similarity. The deeper similarities are just having somebody who is able to write in a very deep way, using their own weaknesses as the subject of the movie. So it's about a guy who's having a midlife crisis. It's about a guy who can't quite figure out how to get things together. It's about a guy who talks to people, and much like Woody Allen does, especially in the beginning, every character in the movie is speaking with B.J. Novak's voice. And that's okay. That's the Woody Allen thing to do. The thing that I love about this is that, so you have this, this kind of somewhat nebbish, or certainly very East Coast elitish kind of guy, someone who is unapologetically intellectual and a little bit nerdy, right? That's the other aspect. We haven't really had a lot of unapologetic nerds in cinema. There's a lot of sort of proud nerds, but it's not quite the same thing as nerds in weird situations where he's just unapologetic about it. But what I love about this is that he mixes it in with his general persona that we know him for, as Ryan Howard from The Office. It's a real update. The kind of insecurity, the kind of cruelty that is in that character of Ryan, which I think he basically writes entirely himself, comes through in here. And I'm pretty sure that that's why Phineas did the music. The soundtrack is good, by the way. It's not spectacular. It's fun that it's Phineas, but we know that Phineas and Billie Eilish are big Office fans. So kind of all that puts together is why I would argue that hopefully B.J. Novak is filling in this Woody Allen hole. And I don't know. I don't know if he's actually a bad guy. I can't imagine that he is. I mean, he liked my Keezers. Like my Keezers thing. I don't know. I don't get the sense that he's actually some dark guy, some terrible guy. I get the sense that he really is putting himself out there, and he's making cinema better for it. Okay, 8 minutes in. Now let's get full spoilery. I will argue there's no such thing as good art that can be spoiled. We're like little children. Like we treat art like it's a football game that someone recorded on a DVR. Don't tell me the score. It doesn't matter. The dragon killed the White Walker. It's art. It's not sports. But anyways, that's fine. Let's get into spoilers. These are going to be a little bit less organized than the other thoughts. I'm just kind of riffing off here, just different. I saw the movie last night. I've actually recorded this video 3 times, but all 3 times the audio was so bad that the sound of my dog slowly licking his non-existent testicles in the back is just going to have to stay in because I don't edit my videos. That's my thing, if you've never watched my videos before. So my favorite part, just sort of apart from everything else, is the Liam Neeson speech. So one of the few sort of Jewish guy from the East Coast who's stuck in Texas, fish out of water jokes, is when he says he won't get vengeance, he's not in a Liam Neeson movie, and the brother character says, "Oh, I just saw a Liam Neeson movie, you remind me of one of those guys." The movie was Schindler's List. I think the implication is, of course, that he's reminded of one of the people who was killed in the Holocaust. So it's kind of a dark, bad joke there. But that wasn't the point. He was setting up his Liam Neeson speech. Because when you say the words Liam Neeson, the first thing people do is they think about his speech in Taken. "I have a certain set of skills, which turns all accents into bane. I have a certain set of skills, I will find you, etc., etc." So BJ Novak worms in this speech when they ask him, what does he do? And the movie came out yesterday, so I don't have the speech in front of me. I need to memorize this speech, how he describes what his skill is at drawing connections between seemingly unconnected things or commenting on society by telling stories. Like, he totally explains the value of what he does, which is basically the value of what I do. Like, obviously I see myself a lot in this character of someone who's really desperately trying to explain the human condition by observation and reporting on that observation. So that was just a really funny part that really is just the level of depth and payoff in here. The thing I'll say is that overall, the movie never does what you think it's going to do. Like, it goes 9/10 of the way to doing something, and then at that last tenth, it goes a different way. It zigs and zags. So as the example is, the movie is constantly threading this line between, is it a worthwhile thing to make a podcast, a radio show like This American Life, or not? So This American Life, if you don't know it, hosted by Ira Glass, is an institution in NPR, National Public Radio, where you have somebody who tells little stories from America, and each of those stories gets bigger and bigger. I was actually once interviewed for an unaired segment for Weekend America, which, anyways, it was about my Chewbacca collection. I wonder what happened to that. I talked to this guy for 3 hours, and then nothing ever happened. That's how famous I am, okay? Put my bow tie back on. So the movie seems like because that's what the whole thing is about. It's about, is there value in taking stories to talk about humanity? And the beautiful thing is that he's really challenging his viewers, because most of his viewers are going to be like me, are going to be like probably you, people who really value this kind of storytelling. This is America, American life. This is how things really, really are. And it does the postmodern thing of being the thing that it is while commenting on the thing that it is. So it does do a good job of explaining the reality of America and the overlapping jurisdictions and the forgotten rural poor in America and the divide between America and the times. Everything that's said, everything that Ben, BJ Novak's character, says is true and is well said and is well illustrated by the story. But it's always undercut at the very last minute. And as he erases the entire podcast, you learn none of it is actually important, because at the center of this story is actually humanism, not storytelling. And I've never seen anything that puts forth the idea that maybe storytelling is not the same thing as embracing humanism. So that's, I would say, is the overarching thesis to the entire thing. Now, at the same time, God damn, this movie's good. At the same time, it's also a recrimination of true crime podcasts, because the story that's being told is vacillating. And Issa Rae, which is probably the reason that we saw the movie, because my wife is like a Issa Rae super fan. If Issa Rae is in something, we just have to watch it, and she's great in this too. Issa Rae, as the podcast producer, is constantly trying to figure out, is this This American Life, or is this a true crime podcast? Is it This American Life, true crime? This American Life, it was an overdose and people use conspiracy theories to try to cope, or a true crime podcast, Who Killed the Dead White Girl? And the beautiful thing about this movie is that it destroys both of those genres as being exploitative. And in the end, the answer is both. It was an overdose that is mundane and a reality of the rural whites in America. And it was a murder by somebody who was super powerful with a network of lies and complexity and basically complicit police. It's all together, all in one. When I'm trying to think about murder stories like this that have this kind of very situated, right, because it's very situated in Texas. I think if you saw this and the movie Lone Star by John Sayles from 95, you'd have a really good sort of Texas twofer. They're neither of them are from Texas, so it's probably better to hear about Texas from people who aren't from Texas, because people from Texas get weirdly nationalistic. It's bizarre. Anyways, it's a very situated murder mystery that tells a lot about life and is simultaneously a mundane murder and a very spiritual murder. I think it's very Twin Peaks-like. I think if you put Twin Peaks next to this, it's kind of a similar question. So here he is, he's humanizing everybody. Storytelling as being a kind of enemy of humanism, right? That's what we have here. And what I love is that, you think that there's just going to be a whole series of jokes about Texans and about how dumb they are and how they live out here and they like Whataburger too much and they like guns, etc. But never, ever, ever are the Texans allowed to be just dumb rubes, just dumb hicks, like we said at a dinner. Like, they are never just dumb hicks. They always know more than Ben thinks they do. Ben is always more savvy than, is always more sort of compassionate and understanding than you think he would be. They both confound each other's stereotypes all the way throughout the movie. And part of the reason that this movie is so good at humanizing people is that it never allows them to be simple. So Ben can actually have humanity that he's been denying his whole life, right? An interesting way of thinking about this movie is just take everything on face value about the nature of how communication is breaking down and how we're all a la carte and how we're all just having relationships on demand and how that's fracturing us and destroying our country. Like all those things that Ben says throughout the movie, he does emphasize, he does represent all those things. But also, for having all those values, these kind of twisted, late capitalist values, he often will show a surprising amount of compassion and understanding. And these simple folk down in Texas, the second they know they're going to be recorded, they start turning it on. They start becoming characters. Like the whole scene at the dinner table, you get the sense they're all acting. So this podcast, this story, which I think represents all kinds of storytelling, shows how corrupting it is. And this is all tied into some of the larger themes about the corruption of wanting your story to be told and not just living, where you have the simple folk who play themselves up in order to be a part of this story. Which is why the only unequivocal hero in the story, I think, is the drug dealer, is Sancholo. Because he asks to turn the recorder off. He doesn't want to be in the story. His care for Abilene was genuine. He doesn't actually know how to be a drug dealer. He's just a sweet guy. And it's great because it sets us up for who is going to be the real enemy. And this is one of the best parts of the movie. And again, if you haven't seen it, definitely stop now because this is the big spoiler. That the real enemy is Ashton Kutcher's character. That is what makes this a truly great movie. Because all the way throughout the movie, towards the end, Issa Rae's character says, we have to leave it vague because that's what works for podcasts. We don't know if Adnan Syed, whatever, did the crime or not, and that gives us that feeling of we can't really know. And the thing about America is we don't really understand. No, there's an answer, and the answer is Ashton Kutcher. And it's great because Ashton Kutcher's character is the character that we liked the most. You liked him the most. I know we all have our problems with Ashton Kutcher as well, for some of the things he said, but still, he's the character that we all liked the most. Because he was this wise man who took his money and power that he got from education and came back to help the people. He is the reverse of Ben, but he's actually just a dark mirror. His exploitation of these people, his exploitation of their sadness, while seemingly shining lights on them to make them glorious, is actually just a different form of exploitation than the one that Ben uses. That's why he has to be the villain. That's why he has to be killed at the end. Because Ben finally understands that he needs to kill that part within himself. So the fact that this character, every line he says is so smart and funny and true, and you just love him so much. You love him because he's like you. He's like Ben. That's why you love him, because he has a cowboy hat, but he's like Ben. That's what we want. We don't want diversity. We want people who don't look like us to think like us. And that's what this movie showed in us by making him be the villain. I would also say if there's one thing this whole thing is against, is the hillbilly elegy. That book that came out a couple years ago, and then the writer ended up becoming a conservative politician. This idea that if we just tell each other enough stories, we'll understand each other. I think that's what Ashton Kutcher character represents as well. This sort of exploitative person who sees and says, you know, these people here, they're just good people, they're this, they're that. No, everybody is just people. Also, obviously, on a superficial level, the fact they both use the term 100%. This is great. I mean, this movie will hopefully put an end to the usage of the term 100%. My two problems with the movie, I'm going to put that in before I say what I think is the best part of the entire movie. The argument at Whataburger, I remember watching it thinking, oh my god, this is the point in the script where every scriptwriter will tell you the partners have to get into a fight. Sorry, Toby just keeps standing over there looking at me. Do you see him over there? You see he's right there? He's just standing there. He's just getting ready to bark at me. Kind of blurry. Oh well. So the point in Whataburger where it's like, it's about to be like, I'm like, oh my god, they're not going to have a fight. They're just getting along super well together. This is so cool. They're subverting this trope. And then, of course, they get into a fight. But, the fight is great because this is the point where Ben actually goes straight at the hillbilly elegy philosophy. You know, we said we took them seriously. We took them literally when we're supposed to take them seriously and this and that. No, you take us seriously. All of the kind of divisions that were being magically erased were being really reinforced here in this moment. And I do think we needed to have that. The other bit was I like the Liam Neeson, like setting it up in the beginning and then paying it off later. But actually talking about Chekhov's gun in a movie and then actually using that gun as Chekhov's gun at the end of the movie, it's okay, but it's a little bit cute. The biggest fear I had with this movie when I saw that, you know, BJ Novak had written, directed, starred, wrote the theme tune, sang the theme tune, like, was that it was going to be Garden State, you know, which is one of my least favorite movies I've ever watched. I find that movie to be like literally torture. Like torture. I think Zach Braff's a fine artist, but that movie is just torture for me, and mainly because it's just too cute. So that was a little too cute. But again, we needed to have Ben kill his mirror image in order to actually grow, in order to kill the story to save the man, right? Because the Ashton Kutcher guy was the story. He was the guy who understood even better than Issa Rae that if he was caught being a murderer, that he himself would become famous, that he understood exactly how the power of the story and the power of the audience could transform him into a hero. So my favorite part of the entire movie... Here, Toby, do you want to come here? Toby, come here. You seem nervous. Is there like a storm coming? Come on. All right. My favorite part of the entire movie is the character of Abilene, who's not in the movie at all. The key to humanizing... Oh no, he sees a deer. It's okay, Toby. Toby, I brought you up here. I trusted you, Toby. I know, there's a deer, and he's shaking his little white tail, and he's a very cute deer, Toby. All right. Abilene as the best character. Because the whole movie, we think that she's just a little simple. We believe this Advil line, that she doesn't actually do drugs. We believe that she's been telling her family that she's in love with Ben. We believe it the whole time because that's our predisposition to believe that she's just some dumb hick who lives in Texas and doesn't understand the big city world, when in reality she was using Ben and she knew it. She knew the rules of the game the whole time. She always knew the rules of the game, and the fact that she was actually a drug abuser makes it even better. And they told us ahead of time that she was a drug user. Let me tell you how. The character at the well, when they said he wouldn't hurt a fly, he says, I don't understand that expression. I would never hurt a fly, but I would kill a fly. Hurting a fly is just torture. So he's taking a sort of standard expression that's used all the time. Wouldn't hurt a fly, wouldn't hurt a fly, wouldn't hurt a fly. And then the expression that's always used for Abilene is she wouldn't even touch Advil. She wouldn't even touch Advil. She wouldn't even touch Advil. I think that's intentionally set up. I think that's a sort of an intentional analog that's being driven to where maybe she wouldn't touch Advil, but she would touch OxyContin, right? She wouldn't hurt a fly, but she would kill a fly. She wouldn't touch Advil, but she would touch OxyContin. But the fact that she's an addict makes it so much better, makes it so much more real, and really drives home the complexity that cannot be contained even within a very well-told story by Issa Rae and BJ Novak. Okay, all right, Toby, I'm going to tell your story. and you will be famous all upon the world. So go see the movie and tell me what you think about it, okay? Until next time, there's the camera.